Colonel Morrison, we need your signature on the final assessment. Those words made my father spill whiskey across the will he was about to sign. The will that divided $2.3 million in assets at a ratio of 97% to my brother, 3% to me, because Dad believed I lacked the capacity to manage significant money. But this is not a story about betrayal. This is a story about the power of silence. Silence is not absence. Silence is choice. For 23 years, I chose silence. Not from weakness, not from fear, because sometimes silence is the only way to protect yourself from people who love you but cannot see you. Let me tell you about the 23 years I spent invisible, and about the night that invisibility shattered. I am Jessica Morrison, 43 years old, Colonel in the United States Marine Corps, Senior Specialist in Weapons Systems Assessment and Procurement, 2 decades evaluating everything from rifles to missile defense platforms, advisor to generals and defense contractors on capability gaps and technological solutions. I testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee on a $4.8 billion weapons modernization program. I convinced them to approve it. I coordinated with NATO allies on interoperability standards across 3 continents. I hold 3 graduate degrees in engineering and strategic studies. I carry top-secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance, the highest security level the government grants. My father thinks I work basic logistics, counting ammunition boxes, organizing supply closets, and for 23 years I let him believe it. People ask me now, after they know the truth, why I never told Dad. The answer is not as simple as classified information prevented disclosure. The truth is this: I chose silence because speaking would have changed nothing. When you tell someone something they do not want to believe, one of 2 things happens. They refuse to believe you, and you lose credibility. Or they believe you and must confront 23 years of being catastrophically wrong. Both outcomes are terrible, both cause pain. So I chose the third path, strategic silence. No explanations, no justifications, just do the work, let the record speak for itself. Someday, I thought, the truth will surface on its own, or it will not. I had made peace with either possibility. That is the power of silence. It does not require anyone else to change. It only requires you to know your own worth, whether anyone sees it or not. But strategic silence, I learned, comes with a cost. Not the obvious cost of being underestimated, that I could handle. The real cost was subtler, more insidious. The cost was watching my own family construct an entire alternate reality about who I was, and then having to live inside that fiction every time I came home. 6 months before the night everything detonated, I overheard Dad on the phone with his estate attorney. He was finalizing the will one last time. I had called the house landline, heard it ring through to voicemail, but Dad picked up the attorney's call on another extension. The old phone system in his McLean house had a peculiarity. If you were already connected on one line, you could hear conversations on other extensions if you stayed quiet. I stayed quiet and listened. David gets the McLean house, $800,000 market value. The investment portfolio, $1.2 million. The gun collection he estimates at $300,000, but is actually worth far less. Retirement accounts, another $180,000. Total for David, $2.48 million. Jessica gets Margaret's jewelry collection, maybe $15,000. $50,000 cash. Personal items of sentimental value. Total for me, $65,000. The attorney, Tom Brennan, pushed back. Mr. Morrison, that is a significant disparity. 97-3. Jessica is 43 with 20 years of military service. She has maintained stable employment, suggesting responsibility and capability. Dad cut him off. Exactly why, Tom? If she really had capability, she would have done something more meaningful than inventory management. David has a family, mortgage, college funds to worry about. He knows how to handle money. Jessica has a steady government paycheck, pension, health care. She will be fine with $50,000. Actually, that is more than she needs. I stood in the hallway outside his study. Phone pressed to my ear. Did not gasp. Did not cry. Just listened. Documented the conversation in my memory with the precision the Marine Corps had trained into me. Strategic silence does not mean ignorance. It means choosing when truth needs to be spoken and when it needs to be stored. I stored this truth for later. After hanging up, I sat in Dad's kitchen for 20 minutes, staring at the refrigerator covered with photos of David's family. Emma and Lucas at various ages, school pictures, soccer team photos. Nothing of me. A few old photos from when Mom was alive, but nothing recent. Nothing from my career. I was invisible even on the refrigerator. The pattern had been building for months. Small incidents I cataloged with methodical precision. January. Cousin Linda called needing $5,000 for emergency dental surgery. I asked for details about the procedure, the dentist, the payment plan options. She hedged. Well, Uncle Bob said you have that government job with stable cash flow. Not like you need to worry about retirement or big expenses since you have a pension. Can you wire it tonight? I could have wired it. I had $85,000 in my emergency fund alone. But something in her tone bothered me. Linda, does Dad talk to the family about my finances? Oh, he just mentions you are set with your government benefits. That you do not have the same financial pressures as those of us in the private sector. Translation. Dad told the extended family I did not need to save money because the government provided everything. That I had no ambition, no financial goals, no need for wealth accumulation. I told Linda I would think about it. She called David instead. He gave her $3,000, then mentioned it to me later like I had been unreasonable for not helping family. February. Uncle Tom called at 11 p.m. Jessica, I am looking at a $150,000 investment opportunity. My buddy is launching a tech startup. Strong business model, experienced team. Can you review the prospectus and advise? I spent 3 hours the next day analyzing the business plan. Identified several red flags. Market saturation in their target segment, unrealistic revenue projections, insufficient runway capital, questionable equity distribution among founders. I called Uncle Tom back with a detailed assessment. Recommended he diversify instead of going all in on a single high-risk venture. Suggested he consult with a fiduciary financial advisor who could provide comprehensive portfolio guidance. Uncle Tom laughed. You are sweet, sweetheart, really sweet. But I am asking about real money decisions. 6 figures. Bob mentioned you do paperwork at the Marines. I probably need someone who understands business at scale. I will call David. My face burned. Not from embarrassment. From the casual dismissal, from the assumption that my careful analysis was naive sweetness rather than professional competence. I wanted to tell him I had consulted on procurement contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, that I understood risk assessment, financial modeling, long-term strategic planning better than most business school graduates. But strategic silence meant letting it go, letting him make his own mistakes. Uncle Tom invested the full $150,000. The startup folded 8 months later. He lost everything. Never asked me for advice again. March brought the cosign request. Jessica, I need a favor. I am doing a $180,000 renovation on the house. Updating the kitchen, refinishing the basement, replacing the HVAC system. Bank needs a cosigner since I am retired, and my income is mostly pension and investment returns. Your government job will help me qualify for better rates. You would not have to pay anything. I will handle all the payments from my retirement accounts. Why not ask David? David is investing heavily in a business venture right now. His liquid capital is tied up. But you have that steady paycheck without major expenses. Perfect credit profile for co-signing. Translation. Dad wanted to leverage the credit score I had built, 785, that he did not know I possessed. For a loan he would repay with inheritance he was not planning to leave me. For renovations to a house he was giving to David. Using my financial competence as collateral while denying that competence existed. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. I told him I needed to think about it. Research the implications. Understand the terms fully before committing. Jessica, it is just a signature. You are overthinking this. It is family. I will get back to you, Dad. I never did. Let the request hang unanswered until he stopped asking. April, the estate planning email. I did not stumble across it by accident. I chose to look. Dad left his iPad on the kitchen counter during Sunday dinner. Email notification glowed on the locked screen. Subject line visible. Final will revisions, Morrison Estate. Per our discussion, Jessica's limited financial acumen suggests. I knew his passcode, his Marine Corps service number, the one he had used for everything for 40 years. I unlocked the tablet. Read the full email thread. Attorney Brennan had challenged Dad repeatedly over 3 months of correspondence. March 15th. Mr. Morrison, Jessica has maintained stable government employment for 20 years. This suggests responsibility and capability, not financial incompetence. A 97-3 split will likely cause significant family discord. Dad's response: Tom, you do not understand the situation. Stability is not the same as success. Jessica found her ceiling early in her military career. She will never rise higher. She is comfortable in her niche, and that is fine. But David is still climbing, still achieving. He needs resources to continue building his future. Jessica just needs security. 50,000 provides that security without giving her enough to make bad decisions with. March 28th. Mr. Morrison, I must advise that such an unequal distribution could be challenged. If Jessica can demonstrate financial competence, she may have grounds to contest the will. Dad's response: on what basis? She has never owned property, never started a business, never made significant investments that I am aware of. Her entire financial life is her government paycheck and whatever pension she will eventually receive. There is nothing to demonstrate competence beyond following a steady path someone else laid out for her. April 3rd. What if Jessica has assets you are unaware of? Dad's response: then she has been hiding them, which suggests either financial problems or an inability to communicate about money. Either way, it confirms my assessment that she needs guidance, not resources. I read the entire exchange, every rationalization, every assumption, every conclusion Dad had reached about my capabilities based on information he never verified. I took screenshots, emailed them to my personal account, documented everything. Strategic silence does not mean ignorance. It means building a case file while choosing not to prosecute yet. Not yet. I returned the iPad to the counter, rejoined Dad in the living room where he was showing David his gun collection, smiled, participated in small talk, played the role I had been playing for 23 years. But something had shifted inside me. Some final thread of tolerance had stretched to breaking. 3 weeks before the dinner that would shatter everything, Dad called about future planning. Jessica, we need to talk about the estate. I am 70. Need to make sure everything is in order. I want you to understand my decisions are not because I do not love you. You are talking about the will. Silence on his end. Surprised that I knew. Did you talk to David? I do not need David to tell me what I already figured out, Dad. Jessica, this is not about love. It is about being practical, about making responsible decisions for both of you. David has a family, a mortgage, college tuitions coming. You have a stable government job, pension, health care. You do not need the same resources. And I do not have expenses? Do not have a future to plan for? You have security. That is what matters. David needs opportunity. There is a difference. I see. Long pause. He was waiting for me to object, to argue, to give him an opening to explain his reasoning, to persuade me he was being wise rather than dismissive. I gave him silence instead. Jessica, you understand, right? This is about what each of you needs. I understand perfectly, Dad. You have made your assessment of what I need very clear. Are you angry? No, Dad, I am tired. There is a difference. I do not understand what that means. I know that is exactly the problem. The conversation haunted me for days, not because of the will itself. Money had never motivated me. I had built my own wealth, my own security, my own future without his help or knowledge. What haunted me was the casual certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction that he understood my life, my capabilities, my needs, based on assumptions he had never questioned, based on a version of me that existed only in his imagination. That weekend, I pulled out my financial documents, looked at them with fresh eyes. My investment portfolio statement. Total value, $1.87 million. Built over 15 years of maxing out my thrift savings plan contributions, making careful private equity investments, leveraging my security clearance for advisory positions that paid well. My house deed, Arlington property, 1,700 square feet, purchased 3 years ago for $600,000. Paid in full, no mortgage, no debt. My personnel file summary, unclassified version showing rank progression, duty stations, schools attended, evaluations received, 23 years of documented excellence in a career my father thought was clerical work. I had more wealth than David. Higher income, better retirement prospects, more financial security. And Dad was leaving me 3% of his estate because he believed I could not handle money. The irony would have been hilarious if it were not so devastatingly sad. General Bradley Nesmith called that Tuesday evening. Colonel Morrison, I will be in D.C. next week for the Defense Contractors Summit. Understand your father, Bob Morrison, lives in the area. We served together in the Gulf War. Been meaning to reconnect. Thought I might stop by to visit him. Will you be around? Would enjoy seeing you outside official capacity. My heart rate spiked. This was not supposed to happen. General Nesmith was not supposed to make connections between Colonel Jessica Morrison, who briefed generals at the Pentagon, and Bob Morrison's daughter, who supposedly counted supplies. General, I am not certain that is advisable. Why not? Bob mentioned having a daughter in the Marines when we talked last year. Did not realize it was you until I saw your name on the summit attendance list and made the connection. Small world. General, there is something you should know about what my father thinks I do. I heard the frown in his voice. What do you mean? He believes I work in basic logistics, supply management, inventory control. He does not know about my actual role or rank. Silence on the line, processing, for 3 seconds. Colonel, are you telling me your father does not know you are a colonel? Does not know you lead the Small Arms Modernization Assessment? That is correct, sir. For 23 years? For 23 years. Longer pause, may I ask why? Because telling him would not have changed his perception, sir. It would only have created conflict I was not prepared to manage. Strategic silence seemed the better option. Until now. Until now, I agreed. What changed? He is finalizing his will, leaving me 3% of his estate because he believes I lack financial competence, and I am tired of being invisible. I see. Does he know I am planning to visit? Yes, sir. He invited you. Called this morning asking me to come to dinner Saturday. Said it would be good for us all to reconnect. Then Saturday may be interesting. Yes, sir, it may be. After hanging up, I sat in my Arlington apartment looking out at the Potomac. Lights from Reagan National Airport traced paths across the sky. Planes taking off and landing, people coming and going. The world in constant motion while I sat still, contemplating 23 years of strategic silence ending in 3 days. Was I ready for this? For the collision of two worlds I had kept carefully separate? No, but ready or not, it was happening. Saturday arrived with October cold that cut through the air like precision blades. I dressed carefully, civilian clothes, the burgundy sweater Mom bought me 5 years before she died. She said it brought out the auburn in my hair, made me look less severe than I appeared in uniform. I had worn it to her funeral, had not been able to wear it since. Until today. If I was going to confront my father about being invisible, I would do it wearing something Mom had chosen. Something that connected me to the one person who had always seen me clearly. The drive to McLean took 3 hours in Saturday traffic. I arrived at 5:45, 15 minutes early. Military habit burned into muscle memory. Dad's house looked unchanged, split-level brick in a neighborhood of similar houses, mature trees, well-maintained lawns, the affluent suburban comfort of Northern Virginia. David's rental car sat in the driveway, silver SUV with Enterprise plates. I parked on the street, grabbed my purse, walked to the front door. Casey opened it before I could knock. Jessica. The hug was tight, almost desperate. She pulled back, studied my face. You look tired. Long drive, traffic. She did not believe me but did not push. Come in. Kids are with Bob looking at his old military photos. David is setting the table. I followed her inside. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic. Italian, probably. Dad's go-to when he wanted to impress. The living room looked frozen in time. Same furniture Mom had picked out, same photos on the mantle, family pictures that stopped at her death 15 years ago. Like time itself had died with her. Jess. David appeared from the dining room. Dress shirt, looking uncomfortable. He hugged me briefly. Thanks for coming. Of course. 3 words containing layers of unspoken meaning. Dad emerged from the den with Emma and Lucas. He looked older than I remembered. 70 years visible in ways they had not been 6 months ago. When had that happened? Jessica, punctual as always. Military training. I kept my voice neutral. Need help with anything? Everything is ready. Dinner at 7. General Nesmith should arrive around 6:30. 45 minutes. 45 minutes of careful performance before the detonation. Emma and Lucas ran over. Aunt Jess! They hugged me with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of children who did not understand adult tension yet. Mom says you work for the Marines. Do you get to shoot guns? Sometimes. Mostly I evaluate them, figure out which ones work best. What does evaluate mean? It means I study them carefully to understand how they work, how they fail, and how to make them better. That sounds boring. Lucas, 9 years old and brutally honest. I laugh despite everything. It can be, but it is important boring. Emma, 12 and perceptive, studied my face with uncomfortable intensity. Grandpa says you do paperwork. Is that the same as evaluating? The question hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Casey stiffened. David looked away. Dad had gone very still in the kitchen doorway. I knelt to Emma's level. Sometimes paperwork is part of evaluating, but evaluating means much more than paperwork. It means understanding complex systems and making them better. Like what kind of systems? Like weapon systems. Making sure Marines have the best equipment possible to do their job safely. That sounds really important. Out of the mouths of children. It is, sweetheart, it is. Casey intervened. Kids, let Aunt Jess breathe. Go wash hands for dinner. They scattered. Casey mouthed an apology. I shook my head. Not her fault her daughter asked questions her grandfather never had. I sat in the living room. David brought me water without asking, sat across from me. Casey excused herself. Dad returned to the kitchen. We were alone. Jess, about the will. His voice was low, cautious. We do not have to discuss it now. Dad wants transparency tonight. He plans to explain his reasoning. I know, that is why I came. David leaned forward. I tried to tell him you deserve better. I did try. Did you? The question was quiet, sharp. I told him you have been responsible with money, that 20 years of stable service should count for something, that the split seemed unfair. And when he dismissed you? Silence. That is what I thought, David. Trying means persistence. Trying means risking his disapproval to defend what is right. What you did was make one gentle suggestion, then accept his decision because it benefits you. That is not fair. You stand to inherit $2.48 million. I stand to inherit $65,000. You made one polite objection, then let it drop. How is calling that out unfair? He looked away. I understand why you're angry. I am not angry, David. I am exhausted. There is a profound difference. The doorbell rang. 6:27. General Nesmith. 3 minutes early. I heard Dad's footsteps crossing to the door. Heard it open. Heard the deep bass voice I recognized from Pentagon briefings. Bob Morrison. You have not aged a day since we served together. Bradley, come in. Come in. They embraced with the particular intensity of combat veterans. Shared danger creates bonds that outlast time. I stood as General Nesmith entered the living room. He wore civilian clothes, but carried himself like he was still in uniform. Posture parade ground perfect. Dad made introductions. You remember my son David? Of course, marketing VP in Atlanta, correct? Bob keeps me updated. Impressive trajectory. And his wife Casey, grandkids Emma and Lucas. General Nesmith greeted them with practiced warmth. Then his eyes landed on me. Recognition flickered across his face. Then calculation as he connected contexts. I stood straighter, muscle memory from countless military encounters. Colonel Morrison. The words detonated like flashbang grenades, light and noise and disorientation radiating outward. I did not expect to see you here. Small world. He crossed to me, hand extended. I shook it, aware of every eye locked on this exchange. Good to see you, sir. Are you here for the small arms assessment or is this social? The question was professional courtesy, normal inquiry between military officers. In my father's living room, with my family watching, those words carried the explosive force of revelation. Dad's whiskey glass slipped from his hand. Crystal shattered against hardwood. Amber liquid sprayed across the Turkish rug Mom had brought back from their anniversary trip to Istanbul. The crash punctuated the moment, before and after. Colonel? Dad's voice carried disbelief, the sound of reality fracturing. His keyring fell from his other hand, brass keys jangling, keys to houses no longer owned, cars long sold, storage units holding Mom's things. All those obsolete keys hitting the floor with cascading metallic discord. Bradley, I think you are confused. Dad's words came slow, deliberate. Someone trying to maintain control while the ground tilted beneath him. This is my daughter Jessica. She is in the Marines, but she is not. General Nesmith's smile faded as he registered the tension. I apologize, Bob. I assumed you knew. Colonel Morrison is one of our top weapons systems specialists. She has been coordinating the small arms modernization assessment, one of the most critical procurement projects the Corps has undertaken in years. Silence crashed over us like a wave. David frozen mid-step, Casey's hand over her mouth, Emma and Lucas peering around the corner, sensing catastrophe with childhood instinct. Colonel. Dad repeated the word like trying to pronounce something foreign. How long? 4 years, sir. I addressed General Nesmith, not Dad. Could not meet my father's eyes yet. And before that, Lieutenant Colonel for 6, Major for 4 before that. The words felt heavy, reluctant. This was the nightmare I had avoided for 23 years, explaining to my father that I was not who he thought, had never been who he thought. Except I did not have to explain. General Nesmith was doing it for me. Jessica. Dad sat heavily in his recliner, leather creaking. 23 years. 23 years, I confirmed. General Nesmith cleared his throat. Perhaps I should clarify. Colonel Morrison is not just participating in the assessment. She is the senior officer leading it. She reports directly to the Deputy Commandant for Combat Development. Pause. Then he continued, perhaps trying to help. She briefs generals, Bob. Sometimes they report to her. The grandfather clock ticked, each second audible in the silence. Mom's anniversary gift. 20 years together, she had inscribed on the back. May we treasure each moment. She died 2 years later. The clock kept ticking anyway. You never told me? Dad's voice barely audible. You never asked what I actually did. You decided I work supply logistics. I let you believe it. Why would you let me think? He stopped, recalibrated. You are a colonel. Yes. You lead major projects. Yes. Generals report to you. Sometimes I brief them. Sometimes they brief me. Depends on circumstances. That came sharper than intended, but I was too tired for modulation anymore. General Nesmith backed toward the entry. Bob, I should leave. Let you have a family conversation. Colonel, my apologies for... It is fine, General. This was inevitable. Better today than 5 years from now. He left quickly. I heard his car start, heard it drive away. We were alone with truth now. No buffer of military courtesy to soften impact. Dad in his recliner. David by the fireplace. Casey had taken the kids upstairs, but Emma's voice carried down. What just happened? Why did Grandpa drop his glass? The manila envelope sat on the dining table, untouched. The will dividing the estate 97-3, based on assumptions that had just shattered. 23 years. Dad said it again. Repetition is processing. 23 years, I agreed. You let me think you were doing logistics. Filing paperwork. Counting supplies. You needed me to be doing logistics. Because accepting that I built a successful career meant accepting you were catastrophically wrong about me from the beginning. That is not fair. The exhaustion made me honest past self-preservation. You have spent 2 decades treating me like I am perpetually one bad decision away from failure. Like I need your protection because I cannot manage my own life. Tonight you plan to explain why you are leaving me 3% of your estate. Your reasoning was going to be that I lack financial competence. I was trying to help. You were trying to feel important. You needed someone struggling so you could play wise father. I was convenient. I could not discuss my work because of classification. So you filled the blanks with assumptions that made you feel necessary. David spoke from the fireplace. Jess, he did not know. Do not call me Jess like I am still 12. And you knew, David, maybe not specifics, but you knew I was not some entry-level clerk. He had the grace to look uncomfortable, I suspected, and never said anything. It was not my place. Number. Just easier to let Dad treat me like the family disappointment. Easier to let him use me as the cautionary tale he tells his golf buddies. I never said that. Dad's protest week. You did not have to. It was embedded in every piece of unsolicited advice. Every time you talked about David's achievements, then asked how the military was treating me. Like I was a victim rather than someone making deliberate choices. I should go. The words emerged before I decided. But once said, they felt right. Jessica, wait. Dad stood. I need to understand. You really are a colonel. Really lead major programs. I've been trying to earn your respect for 23 years, Dad. Did everything right. Excelled in training, earned degrees, built my career, served my country. And you spent that time assuming I was failing. I pulled on my jacket. So yes, I really am a colonel. And no, I do not care if you believe me now that someone else confirmed it. I walked to the door. Dad followed. I did not know. You have to understand. You did not ask. That is what you need to understand. You decided who I was and never checked if you were right. I opened the door. October air rushed in. Your gun collection. I turned back. The Winchester model. 1873. You said it was worth serious money because of the brass receiver. Dad nodded slowly, uncertain where this was going. Standard 1873 Winchesters had iron receivers. Only high-grade 1866 Yellow Boy models had brass, and they were not designated 1873s. What you have is a reproduction from the 1950s, worth maybe $1,200, not $15,000. His face went pale. I authenticated a similar piece for the Smithsonian last year. Part of my job. The job you think involves counting boxes. I left him standing there, walked to my car, drove back to Arlington. 3 hours gave me time to think, to analyze like I would analyze a failed strategy. Where had the breakdown occurred? What could have been salvaged? My phone rang twice during the drive. Dad, both times. I did not answer. It rang a third time at midnight. I almost ignored it. But something made me pick up. Jessica. His voice was destroyed, scraped raw. I'm sorry, I do not know what else to say. I know. I do not know how to fix this. Neither do I, Dad. Silence stretched, not hostile, just exhausted. General Nesmith called, told me things about your work, about who you are. He said I should be proud. You should have been proud 23 years ago. Should have asked questions instead of making assumptions. I know. Do you? Or are you just sorry you got caught being wrong? He did not answer, which was answer enough. I am tired, Dad. Tired of performing mediocrity. Tired of being small so you could feel big. I cannot do it anymore. What do you want from me? Nothing. I do not want anything from you anymore. I stopped wanting your approval years ago. Not entirely true, but it needed to be. We hung up without resolution. Some things cannot be resolved in a phone call at midnight. 3 days later, General Nesmith called my Quantico office. Colonel Morrison, I owe you an apology. It is fine, General. It is not fine. I created an awkward situation. You could not have known, sir. Your father called. We talked at length. He is processing. I imagine he is. For what it is worth, I told him you are one of the best officers I have never personally commanded. Your work is exceptional. The Corps is better because you are in it. Thank you, sir. He asked me to ask you something. He wants to know if there is a path forward. I thought about that, about what forward would look like. Tell him I will come into dinner next month. One dinner. If he treats me like the daughter he has instead of the daughter he invented, we can discuss another one after that. I will tell him. 1 month later, I drove back to McLean. Just Dad and me this time. The silence was uncomfortable but not hostile. He had done homework. Articles about weapons procurement, organizational charts, Wikipedia pages on Marine Corps ranks, heavily annotated. Over dinner, he brought it up. I looked at the Winchester. You were right. Reproduction. I paid $15,000 30 years ago. I have been wrong about its value for 3 decades. It happens. I have been wrong about many things much longer. I did not argue. We talked about my work, parts I could discuss. He asked real questions, not rhetorical ones designed to prove his expertise. He listened to answers, did not offer advice. Not comfortable, not heartwarming reconciliation, but honest. And honesty was something we had never had. At evening's end, he took out his key ring, removed the brass key to the gun cabinet. You should have this. Dad, I do not want your collection. Not why I am giving it to you. You are the one who actually knows what these are, who can appreciate them properly, who will not make my mistakes. I took the key, not because I wanted it, because refusing would have been cruel. I am sorry for all of it, for every assumption, for every time I made you small. I know. Is that enough? I do not know yet. Ask me in a year. The 2 a.m. call ended with Dad's broken apology still echoing in my ear. I am sorry for both reasons. Sorry I was wrong. Sorry I got exposed. Sorry I wasted 23 years. Honesty like that does not erase damage, but it gives you something to build from. I did not sleep. Sat at my kitchen table watching Arlington transform from darkness to dawn. Joggers appeared on sidewalks at 5:30. Lights flickered on in apartment windows. The city waking while I remained suspended between exhaustion and something close to relief. The confrontation was over. What came next, I had no idea. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m. David. Can we talk? 3 words carrying more weight than their syllables suggested. Now? He called immediately. Jess. Voice strained in ways I had never heard. Casey did not sleep last night. She kept me up for 4 hours talking. She is furious. With you or with Dad? With me. Long silence. I waited. She said what you said about my complicity, about how I let Dad dismiss you because it was easier than confronting him. She said if Emma spends the next 20 years achieving things I miss because I am not paying attention, she will divorce me. He paused. She meant it, Jess. Said complicity in someone's erasure is grounds for ending a marriage. What do you want me to say? I want to know how to apologize for 23 years. Where do I even start? First honest question he had asked in a decade. You start by acknowledging what your silence cost me, David. Not what it might cost you now. What it cost me for 2 decades. Every family dinner where Dad praised your promotions, then asked me how the military was treating me like I was barely surviving. Every holiday where you watched him redirect financial questions away from me because he told everyone I did not understand real money. Every conversation about his estate planning where you made one weak objection, then accepted his reasoning because fighting harder risked your inheritance. That is what you apologize for. Not that you feel bad now, that you participated in my systematic invisibility. Silence stretched so long I checked if the call had dropped. Can I try to apologize properly? You can try. But David, you benefit materially from Dad's will. As long as you are accepting 97% of an estate you know should be split fairly, your apology carries the stain of self-interest. So I need to refuse the inheritance? I am saying you need to decide if being right matters more than being comfortable. You cannot have both. Let me think about this. Take your time. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Pentagon briefing at 0800. 18 months of work compressed into 90 minutes of presentation. I put on my dress blues with meticulous care. Every ribbon aligned, every brass fitting polished, rank insignia centered perfectly on collar and shoulders. The uniform was armor, protection and proclamation combined. The Pentagon briefing room held 23 senior officials, Secretary of Defense Ramirez at the head of the table, 3 Joint Chiefs, Deputy Commandant for Combat Development, senior acquisition officers from all services, 23 people whose collective decisions shaped American military capability. I stood at the podium with 47 slides loaded. 18 months distilled into data points and recommendations. Good morning. I am Colonel Jessica Morrison, Marine Corps Combat Development Command. I am here to present the final assessment and recommendations for the Small Arms Modernization Program. 90 minutes of pure technical analysis followed, evaluation methodology, test protocols across 14 weapon platforms, comparative contractor assessments, cost projections, risk matrices, NATO interoperability considerations. Questions came hard and skeptical. A 3-star from Army tried to punch holes in my testing methodology. I walked him through the statistical validity of our sample sizes and controlled conditions. An acquisition official questioned the budget implications. I showed him the 20-year life cycle cost analysis demonstrating $3 billion in savings compared to current procurement trajectories. Air Force representative raised interoperability concerns. I presented the NATO standardization agreements we had already secured with 3 allied nations. At the end, Secretary Ramirez leaned back, studied me with the assessment of someone who had sat through thousands of briefings and could distinguish competence from performance. Colonel Morrison, this is exceptional work, comprehensive methodology, sound analysis, fiscally responsible recommendations. Your hybrid approach combining elements from competing proposals while rejecting vendor pressure shows the independent judgment we need. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I understand one of the rejected contractors offered you a position. Yes, sir. Executive VP of Strategic Assessment, $400,000 annually. I declined due to conflict of interest during the evaluation period. That integrity is exactly why this assessment has credibility. When you tell us a system meets requirements, we believe you. You have proven you cannot be bought. He looked around the table. Recommended for implementation. Approved for congressional appropriations request. The room cleared. General Nesmith, attending as a consultant, caught me in the hallway. Your father called me again this weekend. 5th time since the dinner. What did he want? To understand, he is trying, Jessica. Actually trying. Trying is different from succeeding, General. True. But refusing to acknowledge effort because it cannot erase the past means you never reach the future. I will consider that, sir. Wednesday. Brussels bound for NATO standardization meetings. But first, another call I had been avoiding. Dad answered on the first ring. Jessica, I am flying to Brussels this afternoon. NATO meetings. I will be gone a week. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Silence hung between us. New and uncomfortable. Dad, I have been thinking about what you said, about wanting to fix this. Tell me what to do. It is not about specific actions. It is about understanding why 23 years of assumptions were so destructive, why I chose silence, why your apology now, while necessary, cannot undo hurt. I am trying to understand. I have been reading about military procurement, about classification levels, about what colonels actually do. That is homework. Good. But understanding me requires more than Wikipedia articles. What does it require? Time. Willingness to be wrong repeatedly as you discover how little you know about who I actually am. Can you handle that? Long pause. I do not know, but I want to try. Then we will talk when I get back. Brussels consumed 6 days. Technical sessions on ammunition standardization. Debates about cross-border logistics. Late-night negotiations hammering out language 15 nations could agree to. Professional work I was good at. Work where my competence was never questioned. I landed at Dulles Sunday evening. Package waited at my apartment door. From Dad, his handwriting on the address label. Inside, a textbook. Military procurement and acquisition. A comprehensive guide. Post-it notes marked dozens of pages. His handwriting in margins. Questions. Observations. Page 47. Is this the kind of evaluation you do? Page 93. Congressional oversight. Is this why you testified before Senate? Page 142. Classification levels. Explains why you could not share details. Each note a small attempt to bridge 23 years of deliberate ignorance. My phone rang. Dad, did you get the package? Reading it now. I know it is probably elementary for you, but I wanted you to show I am trying to learn. Your questions are good questions. Will you come to dinner? Help me understand what I'm getting wrong? Not this week. I am exhausted from travel, but next month, like we agreed. Next month. 6 weeks after the catastrophic dinner, I drove back to McLean, just Dad and me. He had requested private time without family complications. The house looked the same. Dad looked different, older, or maybe just uncertain. 23 years of confidence in his understanding had evaporated, leaving visible confusion. He had done more homework. Printouts covered the coffee table, Defense Department organizational charts, articles about weapons testing, Marine Corps rank structure, annotated heavily in his handwriting. Over dinner, he asked questions from his research. I explained what I could without breaching security protocols. He listened. Actually listened instead of waiting to dispense wisdom. I looked into your Winchester claim. You were completely right. Paid $15,000 in 1995 from a Richmond dealer who guaranteed authenticity. It is a reproduction worth maybe $1,200. I have been wrong about its value for 3 decades. The antique firearms market has sophisticated reproductions. I have been wrong about many things much longer than 3 decades. I did not contradict him. Near evening's end, he walked to his desk, pulled out the key ring, that brass collection of obsolete access, worked the gun cabinet key free. You should have this. Dad, I do not need your collection. Not about need, about who actually understands what these weapons are. Who sees their real value instead of imagined worth? That is you. I took the small brass key, weighed almost nothing, meant everything. I am sorry, Jessica, for every assumption, every dismissal, every time I made you invisible. I know. Is it enough? Ask me in a year. We did not become close. Could not after 23 years. But we started. 3 months later, David called with news. I talked to Dad's estate attorney. I am refusing the 97% split. You did what? Casey was right. I have been complicit. I cannot undo 23 years, but I can refuse to profit from Dad's misconceptions. David, that is $2.4 million. It was never mine, was always supposed to be half yours. I just let Dad convince me otherwise because it benefited me. First time he had owned that completely. Thank you. Do not thank me for doing what should have been obvious from the start. 6 months after the confrontation, Dad called with an unusual request. I am selling the gun collection. Why? Because I spent 30 years collecting based on what I wanted pieces to be instead of what they are. Time to face reality. Where will you sell them? That is why I am calling. Will you authenticate the pieces professionally? I will pay your standard consulting rate. Dad, you do not need to pay me. Yes, I do. This is professional expertise. Museums pay you $500 an hour. I should pay the same. Symbolic, I realized. Acknowledging my expertise, valuing it commercially, treating me as professional instead of daughter. He had misunderstood. I will authenticate them. But I will donate my fee to Marine Corps Women's Leadership Scholarship. In Mom's name. She would have loved that. The authentication weekend required professional equipment. I brought reference materials, magnification tools, chemical testing kits, documentation templates to McLean. Dad watched me work. I explained methodology as I examined each piece. This Colt single-action army. 3rd generation manufacture, 1976. Serial number prefix and proof marks indicate commercial production post-1974 restart. Market value approximately $2,000. This Springfield 1903. Arsenal refinish post-World War II. Metal composition analysis shows government refurbishment at Springfield Armory circa 1952. Value around 850. This M1 Garand, mix master configuration, barrel from Springfield, receiver from Winchester, other components from International Harvester. Common for service rifles that went through depot maintenance. Value 1200. Each piece documented, authenticated, accurately valued. Final assessment, $47,340. Not the $300,000 Dad had insured them for. You were right about every piece. This is what I do. Assess weapon systems from antiques to modern platforms. By Sunday evening, documentation was complete. Dad reviewed it at his dining table. I am keeping one piece. Your grandfather's M1 Garand. Not because of value, because of family history. He slid the documentation across to me. The rest is yours eventually. Not the collection itself, the knowledge of what it actually is. Thanksgiving arrived 9 months post-confrontation. Extended family gathered at Dad's house. Cousin Linda cornered me in the kitchen. Jessica, Uncle Bob said you are actually a colonel? Like important? Before I could respond, Emma appeared, 12 going on 20. Aunt Jess has always been important, Cousin Linda. You just assumed she was not because Grandpa told you wrong. Out of the mouths of children. Uncle Tom approached later, awkward. When I asked for investment advice and you seemed uncertain, I thought you did not understand business-level money. I was being professionally responsible. I assess weapons systems, not investment portfolios. I was declining to advise outside my expertise. Dad overheard, stepped in unprompted. That is on me, Tom. I told everyone Jessica did basic logistics. I was catastrophically wrong. She is a colonel leading major programs. I spent 23 years not knowing my own daughter. First time he had publicly owned it. Emma pulled me aside to the porch later. Aunt Jess, why did Grandpa not know what you did? I knelt to her level. Because success looks different to different people, Em. To Grandpa, success looked like your dad, visible career, achievements he could brag about at golf. My achievements were classified. My rank was not obvious in civilian clothes. My work happened in briefing rooms he would never see. That is dumb. It is human. People believe what they can see. Takes effort to ask about what they cannot. How do I make sure people ask about me? You do not, sweetheart. You achieve anyway. The people who matter will ask. The people who do not ask are not your problem. She hugged me. When I grow up, I want to surprise people like you did. No, Em, when you grow up, be visible from the start. Do not repeat my mistakes. Learn from them. Generational healing. Breaking cycles. Year 1 passed into year 2. Monthly dinners became routine. Dad and I were not close, but we were honest. He learned to ask before advising, to listen to answers, to acknowledge when he did not understand instead of pretending. I learned to give him chances, to forgive incrementally, to rebuild without pretending the past had not happened. David made his refusal of the unequal inheritance official. Even though Dad had already revised to 50-50, David wanted it on record he had rejected the original terms. Casey told me later it saved their marriage. Emma turned 15, started asking about military careers. Not because of me, she insisted, but I had influenced the possibility. Year 2 became year 3. I turned 46, started considering retirement from the Corps. Job offers accumulated. Defense contractors willing to pay extraordinary sums. 3 firms, $400,000 to $550,000 annually. Also an offer from National Defense University. Teaching position, $180,000. Fraction of contractor money. Over dinner, I discussed options with Dad. The contractor positions would set you up for life financially. I'm already set up. I have more than I need. Then what matters? Impact. What I leave behind. Money just accumulates. Knowledge passed forward multiplies. You are leaning toward teaching. Yes. Significant pay cut. More meaningful work. At this point, meaning matters more than money. He nodded slowly. Your mother always said the best inheritance is wisdom, not wealth. The conversation felt significant. Dad offering perspective without advice. Respecting my judgment without trying to shape it. Small progress, but real. I accepted the teaching position 3 months later. Would start after retirement ceremony in the fall. Meanwhile, monthly dinners continued. Dad asked about procurement processes. I explained methodology without classified details. He asked about career progression. I described the paths I had chosen and why. He asked about Mom, whether she had known about my work. She knew I was doing important things. She understood classification. She never needed details to be proud. His eyes watered. I miss her every day. She would have been proud of you. She's proud, Dad. Somehow I know that. We were building something, slowly, carefully, without pretending 23 years of invisibility had not happened, but acknowledging it, working through it, finding ways to know each other as we actually were instead of as we had imagined. One afternoon, Dad called with a specific question. Jessica, I have been thinking about that night when General Nesmith said your rank, when everything changed. What about it? If he had not visited, if the truth had stayed hidden, would you have been okay with that? Honest question deserved honest answer. I do not know. Part of me had made peace with being invisible to you. Part of me was dying inside. Both were simultaneously true. And now? Now I am seen, clearly, painfully, honestly. That is better than 23 years of comfortable invisibility, even though it hurt, especially because it hurt. Pain meant you finally cared enough to actually look. Long silence. Then thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. After failing you for 23 years, you could have walked away that night. You almost did. I thought about it. What made you stay? Hope. Stubborn, probably foolish hope that maybe it was not too late. Was it foolish? I looked around my apartment, the gun cabinet in the corner now holding my achievements. Challenge coins from 47 units, commendations from 3 presidents, NATO partnership medallions, photos with generals and defense secretaries, congressional testimony transcripts, and one photo of Mom, the only personal item. No, Dad, not foolish, hard, requiring 3 years of mutual effort, but not foolish. Emma called from the Naval Academy during plebe summer. 16 years old, already more visible than I had been at 20. Aunt Jess, this is brutal, but I keep thinking about what you said, about being seen clearly, about not shrinking. Are you making it? Barely, but I am making it. That is all that matters. One day, one challenge at a time. How do you know I am strong enough? Because you come from strong women. Your grandmother, me, your mother. We survived being underestimated. You are doing better, making them see you from the start. 2 years and 10 months after the catastrophic dinner, I sat in my office grading acquisition strategy papers for my first NDU class. One student had written about the tension between visibility and security in classified work, about building careers no one can see. I wrote in the margin, "Your worth does not depend on who is looking, but being seen clearly by people who matter is better than comfortable invisibility. Learn when to use silence and when to use voice." My retirement ceremony was scheduled for 6 weeks out. Dad called that evening. Jessica, I want to ask you something about the ceremony. What about it? Can I invite some people? Friends who should have known who you were all along? You want to bring your golf buddies? I want them to see what I missed, who you actually are. Is that okay? Long pause while I processed. Yes, Dad, that is okay. Thank you. And Jessica, I will not miss Emma's achievements. I promise you that. I will not spend 23 years not knowing who she becomes. Good, she deserves that. Every young person does. The pieces were aligning, not perfectly, not without scars, but aligning towards something honest, something real, something we had never quite managed before. Being seen clearly is painful, especially when it reveals how much time was lost to assumptions and silence. But pain, I was learning, could lead to healing if both people were willing to do the work. 3 years and 2 months after the catastrophic dinner, I retired from the Marine Corps at age 48. 26 years of service ending at Marine Barracks, Washington. Full dress blues required. Ceremonial protocol. The weight of tradition made visible. Secretary of Defense Ramirez attended. General Nesmith gave the retirement speech. My chain of command showed up in force. Defense contractors I had worked with. NATO colleagues who flew in from Europe. And family. Dad in the front row. Tears streaming openly. David and Casey with Emma and Lucas. Extended family who had spent years thinking I counted bullets in supply depots. General Nesmith stood at the podium for the retirement remarks. In my 38 years in the Corps, I have had the privilege of serving with exceptional officers. Colonel Morrison ranks among the finest. Her technical expertise in weapons systems assessment is unmatched. Her integrity in an environment where contractor influence is constant has set the standard for acquisition ethics. But what makes Colonel Morrison truly exceptional is not just competence. It is her commitment to getting it right, even when getting it right is difficult. The small arms modernization assessment she led will shape Marine infantry capability for 2 decades. Her testimony before Congress influenced defense policy at the highest levels. Her consultation with allied nations strengthened partnerships critical to our security. He paused, looked directly at Dad. Bob Morrison and I served together in combat years ago. I knew him as a Marine who valued excellence. I am certain he is proud of his daughter today. Dad nodded, unable to speak, still crying. The Marine Corps is better because Colonel Morrison served. The nation is safer because of her expertise. Secretary Ramirez approached with the Legion of Merit Medal. Colonel Morrison, it is my privilege to present this on behalf of a grateful nation. Your service exemplifies the highest standards of the Marine Corps. Your integrity, your competence, your dedication to mission over self-interest have left an indelible mark. The room stood. Applause filled the space. Dad stood with everyone else, wiping tears, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time, or maybe seeing me clearly for the first time in 23 years. After the ceremony, private moment in the hallway. I'm so proud of you, Jessica. I wish I'd said that 26 years ago when you enlisted. You are saying it now, that matters. Your mother would be proud too. Of you, of who you became despite my failure to see you. She is proud, Dad. I know she is. I had already accepted the National Defense University position, teaching strategic acquisition to junior officers. 180,000 salary, less than a third of what contractors had offered. Dad had not questioned the choice, just nodded and said Mom would have approved. Progress. First day of class at NDU, I stood before 40 junior officers, captains and majors from all services, beginning their acquisition careers. I am Professor Morrison, retired Colonel Marine Corps, 26 years, most in weapons systems assessment and procurement. Before we discuss acquisition strategy, I want to tell you about strategic silence. I spent 23 years invisible to my own family. Not because I failed, because I succeeded in ways they could not see. Doing work I could not discuss. Building a career in spaces they would never enter. Many of you will face this. People you love will underestimate you. Make assumptions. Offer advice you do not need while missing achievements you earned. You will have choices. Fight constantly for recognition. Exhaust yourself proving worth to people who decided not to see it. Or strategic silence. Do the work. Build the career. Let achievements speak. Or selective transparency. Share with those who ask genuinely. Silence with those who already decided. I chose strategic silence for 23 years. It worked, it did not work. Both statements are true. But here's what I learned. Being seen clearly is better than being seen kindly, even when clarity hurts, even when it exposes painful truths. Because hurt from honesty is temporary. Invisibility from assumption is permanent. Female captain in front row raised her hand. Ma'am, do you regret the silence? I regret it was necessary. I do not regret choosing it. Strategic silence is not weakness. It is protection. It is survival. It is refusing to shrink yourself to fit someone else's imagination. The goal is not avoiding silence. The goal is knowing when silence serves you and when it diminishes you. Army Major, how do you know the difference? When silence protects your peace, use it. When silence becomes complicity in your own erasure, break it. Took me 23 years to learn that. I am teaching you now, so it takes you less time. The semester progressed. I taught acquisition policy, procurement methodology, stakeholder management, congressional relations. But the most important lessons were about knowing your worth when others cannot see it, about competence in the face of dismissal, about strategic silence and strategic voice. Students responded, especially women, especially those from families who did not understand military culture. One female captain stayed after class. Professor Morrison, my father thinks I work in admin, plans events, coordinates schedules. He does not know I am a contracting officer managing $90 million in annual acquisitions. Why have you not told him? Same reason you did not tell yours. Because telling him would not change his perception. Would only create conflict I am not ready to manage. I nodded. That is strategic silence. But remember, silence has a cost. Make sure you are willing to pay it. How long did you pay it? 23 years. Do not be me, Captain. Find your moment sooner if you can. She left thoughtful. Monthly dinners with Dad continued. Year 3 became year 4. We were not close. 23 years of fundamental misunderstanding could not evaporate. But we were honest. He asked questions. I answered when I could. He listened. Actually listened. He learned to recognize when he did not understand something instead of pretending expertise. I learned to give him chances, to forgive incrementally, to rebuild without pretending the past had not happened. Emma thrived at the Naval Academy, called regularly for advice, not always about military matters, sometimes just to talk. Aunt Jess, there is a guy in my company who keeps explaining things I already know. Acts like I am incompetent because I am female. What do you do about it? Outperform him. Let the results speak. Sound familiar? She laughed. Strategic silence? Strategic competence. Similar concept, different application. Does it ever get easier? Being underestimated? No, but you get better at not needing their validation. That is the key. Know your own worth regardless of who sees it. 4 years post-confrontation, Dad called with a question. Jessica, I have been thinking about that night. The night General Nesmith said your rank. What about it? If he had not visited, if the truth had never come out, would you have been okay? Honest question deserved honest answer. I do not know. Part of me had made peace with being invisible to you. Part of me was dying inside. Both were simultaneously true. And now? Now I am seen, clearly, painfully, honestly. That is better than 23 years of comfortable invisibility, even though it hurt. Especially because it hurt. Pain meant you finally cared enough to really look. Long silence on the line. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. After 23 years of failing you, you could have walked away. You almost did. I thought about it seriously. What made you stay? Hope. Stubborn, probably foolish hope that maybe it was not too late to build something real. Was it foolish? I looked around my apartment. The gun cabinet in the corner held my career now. Challenge coins from 47 units. Commendations from 3 presidents. NATO partnership medallions. Photos with generals and secretaries. Published articles. Congressional testimony transcripts. And 1 photo of Mom. Only personal item in the collection. No, Dad, not foolish. Hard, requiring years of effort from both of us. But not foolish. The conversation ended. I returned to grading papers. One student had written about tension between visibility and security in classified work, about building careers no one can see. I wrote in the margin, your worth does not depend on who is looking, but being seen clearly by people who matter is better than comfortable invisibility. Learn the difference. Emma graduated from the Naval Academy 4 years later. I attended in full dress uniform. Dad sat beside me, now 79 and frail but present. When they called Ensign Emma Morrison to receive her commission, Dad leaned over. I will not miss this one. I will not spend 23 years not knowing who she becomes. Good, she deserves that. Every young person does. 5 years after the catastrophic dinner, I sat in my NDU office reflecting on the journey, from invisible to visible, from assumed failure to acknowledged success, from strategic silence to strategic voice. The cost had been high. 23 years of being underestimated, of performing mediocrity, of watching family construct alternate reality about who I was. But the result was real. Dad and I had built something honest from ruins of what never worked. Not close, not like fathers and daughters in movies, but honest, real, based on who we actually were instead of who we imagined. I thought about all the students I had taught, all the junior officers learning to navigate careers where competence was not always visible, where achievements happened in classified spaces, where families might never fully understand. I thought about Emma, starting her own military journey with visibility I never had. I thought about Mom, who had always seen me clearly even when no one else could. And I thought about that night 5 years ago. General Nesmith saying my rank, keys falling, glass shattering, 23 years of careful pretending becoming impossible. Some revelations happen because you orchestrate them. Some happen because you cannot hide anymore. Some happen because someone says your truth out loud, and suddenly all the careful performance collapses. I am Jessica Morrison, 48 years old, retired colonel, United States Marine Corps, professor at National Defense University. For 23 years, I was invisible to people who should have seen me clearly. I was valued at $65,000 while I built $2.3 million in wealth. I was locked out of a gun cabinet by a father who did not know I authenticated weapons for the Smithsonian. I was offered career advice by people who did not know what career I had. And I survived it all through strategic silence. But here's what I want you to know. If you are being underestimated right now, if your family does not see your worth, If you are tired of being invisible, you are not alone. If your family dismisses your expertise, that reflects their blindness, not your invisibility. If you built success no one acknowledges, it is still real, still valuable, still yours. If you are exhausted from performing mediocrity to protect others' egos, you can stop. Strategic silence has power, but so does strategic voice. Learn when to use each. I chose silence for 23 years because speaking would not have changed anything. The choice protected me even as it cost me. But when silence shifted from protection to complicity in my own erasure, I let it break. Not by choice, by accident, by a general saying my rank out loud. And that breaking, painful as it was, led to something better. 3 years of hard work, monthly dinners, honest conversations, slow trust building, mutual effort to create something new from ruins of something that never worked. Not everyone gets that chance. Some families cannot handle truth. Some relationships cannot survive honesty. But some can, if both people are willing. So if you are living invisible right now, remember, love without respect is incomplete. Family without honesty is not whole. Worth that requires constant validation from others is not worth. You are who you are, whether anyone is looking or not. Your achievements are real whether anyone acknowledges them. Your expertise is valuable whether anyone pays for it. The goal is not avoiding silence. The goal is knowing when silence serves you and when it diminishes you. Knowing when being seen clearly, even painfully, is better than being comfortable invisible. I learned that lesson at 43. I teach it now so others learn it younger. Being seen clearly is better than being seen kindly, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because that is when you know it is real. My phone rang, Dad calling. Jessica, I am at the house looking at the empty gun cabinet. The one I gave you. The one you gave me is in my apartment, Dad, full of my career now. I know. I was just thinking. That cabinet used to hold things I thought were valuable but never examined closely. Now it holds things you know are valuable because you examined them carefully. There is a metaphor there. Yes, there is. What made you call? Just wanted to say I am glad the cabinet found its proper owner. Me too, Dad, me too. The call ended. I looked at the cabinet across my office. Challenge coins catching light, medals in shadow, photos of moments Dad never witnessed but finally understood. And Mom's picture in the center. She had always known, always seen, always believed. Being seen clearly is better than being seen kindly. Even when it takes 23 years to achieve. Even when it requires keys falling and glass shattering and careful performances collapsing. Because clarity, however painful, is the foundation of truth. And truth is the only foundation worth building on.